This meeting is being recorded.
All right, welcome back to Florida Football Insiders. You heard from Coach Jim Leavitt. Now we're going to bring on sideline reporter for the USF Bulls, longtime media member in the Tampa Bay market, worked for the Tampa Tribune for many, many years, Joey Johnston. Joey Johnston, communications.com. Joey does a lot of media work in the Tampa Bay area still. Again, he's a sideline reporter for part of the Bulls, USF Bulls broadcast. So we're going to bring Joey on, talk a little USF Bulls as well as some other things in the state of Florida. Welcome back, Joey.
Jason, thanks for having me back. We got a lot to talk about, I think.
We do. First off, before we get started, I've read something about you. I saw a note. Now, are you an old school $100,000 pyramid guy with Dick Clark? Or are you new school with Michael Strahan?
I'm good with all of it, but I love the Dick Clark, obviously, where Dick would kind of lean over in sympathy when they would just miss it, and then he would just almost come to tears for the poor person that just missed that $100,000. But yeah, right. that's my all-time favorite game show for sure.
That was in my wheelhouse when I was a youngster.
That would be maybe my bucket list if somehow I could get on the show one day. That would be cool.
Yeah, that was great. They used to have some great celebrities and all the guys back in the 70s and 80s, and
it's an unusual skill set where you have to get your hands bound behind your back, where you really have to stay calm. You have to stay calm. And think clearly, because if you start getting too excited, not going to work out.
That's right. All right, let's talk before we get to the state of Florida. Let me get your thoughts on a couple. We've had several coaching dismissals so far through 5 weeks of the regular season. Some people that are familiar in the Tampa Bay area. Herm Edwards at Arizona State gets let go. You got Paul Chryst up at Wisconsin, and Darrell at Colorado just got let go. Just your thoughts of the mindset of some of these administrations around the country making these midseason moves so quickly.
Well, I think first of all, we have 5 major college jobs that have come open, and we're not even halfway through the season. And I think you have to go back, a decade or more to have a total of 5.
Right.
So clearly this is a new trend we're seeing this year, whether it's, the money, the pressure to win, the early signing day, there's some new dynamic in place where this is just caught on like wildfire, because we haven't seen it like this ever.
Right.
Herm Edwards and Carl Darrell, I can't say I'm shocked with either of those guys. They were having some trouble getting things going. I'm completely shocked at Paul Chryst, 41 games over 500, class guy, a complete winner, did well in the Big Ten, a very respectable, good program. I know they're off to a 2-3 start. They just lost to their former coach, Brett Bielema.
Big time. Yeah. That's the big one. They got thumped by Bielema in their house, in their building.
It still isn't going down my throat very, very easily, though. I'm still just shaking my head at the whole thing. And I guess we're living in an age where these Power 5 schools, they have so much money that $16 million buyout is just, chump change is the right word, but goodness, right. It's definitely making my head spin. But Paul Chryst by far is the one that made me stop in my tracks. I almost couldn't believe it when I heard it.
Yeah, interesting. I get the sense, just being a fan from the outside, I think the lack of the ability to either transition to the spread of some sort. I mean, they're just a pretty vanilla, and their margin of error is so low at Wisconsin. If that defense isn't playing great, their offensive, whether it's scheme or whether it's quarterback play, whatever, they're just so vanilla on offense. It seems like I think that's what ultimately doomed in Paul Chryst.
Well, 2 things I've heard, and I know a few Wisconsin people, and I think number one, I think they rushed for 2 yards, and that's almost like a personal insult to Wisconsin fan. I mean, they can't live with something like that. I think also it's, I'm old enough, and maybe you are too, to remember when Wisconsin was not a good football program by any stretch.
Before Barry Alvarez, yep.
And when Barry Alvarez took the job and they got to the Rose Bowl the first time, that was like a miracle. Right. Wisconsin was in the Rose Bowl. They've been back many times since.
Right.
But I think, and this is true not only of Wisconsin, but many programs. I mean, you kind of forget who you are, and you have this inflated opinion. I mean, Wisconsin's not Ohio State. They're not Michigan. They're just not. They're very good. Some years they're better than Michigan and Ohio State, but not consistently. So I think part of it might just be Wisconsin has a higher opinion of itself than maybe is logical.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're right. I mean, but again, it seems like football has transitioned so much to a different style of offense than when they were going to Rose Bowls. And you're right. You're not getting a lot of elite players to go to Madison, Wisconsin. As quarterbacks, receivers, those kind of guys. And again, here's the other thing. Jim Leonard is a hot name for other head coaching jobs, and they're able to keep him potentially by making him the interim coach.
Yeah, and I think that's certainly a part of it, that the threat of him leaving, that they can lock him up, and not only that, they can give him 8 games or however many they have left to kind of audition and see if he's the guy for them moving forward. I think ultimately he's going to be the guy because he's a Wisconsin through and through. But all whether that's the factor or not, it's still we're still talking about a 67-26 coach that just got fired 5 games into a season. We've never seen anything like that before. I mean, like ever.
You're right. You're right. It's a different world. I mean, with all the money that's being flowed in with these TV contracts, I mean, they probably have a little more flush money than they used to have, and maybe that's the reason why they're able to make this kind of move.
Yeah, I guess so. And the funny thing is, I mean, Wisconsin could still win their division. They still might end up in a big bowl. I mean, they're only 2-3. Again, it's so well before the time we're used to pushing a panic button, any of us, for any team, that it's just hard to get used to that sort of thing. But I guess particularly as we move into the era of these major conferences, we may see this more and more. I mean, because in these Big Ten and SEC new alignments, there's going to be some brand name teams that aren't going to have good records. Because somebody's got to lose these games,
right?
And somebody's got to be in the middle of the pack or at the bottom,
right?
So we may be seeing a rude awakening for some of these schools that you look at the SEC or the Big Ten and you're kind of a middle kind of contender. How are you going to climb over 5 or 6 teams to ever win a conference title again? I mean, and we see Oklahoma and Texas struggling in the Big 12 right now. What are they going to do in the SEC? I mean, they're not. They're certainly not thumping their Big 12 competition. And they're about to go up in class quite a bit in a few years.
All right, let's get to the state of Florida. The team you cover, USF Bulls. Again, back to the situation where the coach is a little bit feeling some heat down here in the Tampa Bay area. It's not, I don't think, again, for me, it's not that they're losing games. It's the way they're losing games. You play really well against Florida, should win the game. Honestly, if you're objective about it, they were the better team that night in Gainesville. You don't win the game, then you come out the next 2 weeks and lay two eggs and you get blown out early in both games. What do you see just from the Bulls roster of where these slow starts are coming from? What does Jeff Scott think what is it attributing to these slow starts?
Well, I think number one, the first thing I see is just a disorganization and not playing well on defense early in the game. I mean, against BYU, it was as simple as they couldn't get lined up.
Right.
I mean, they couldn't get the signal in time, and their guys were not in the right position. And there were a couple of touchdowns where the BYU player ran right past a defensive back who just wasn't in the right place. So, I mean, certainly that's coaching and that's preparation.
Right.
A couple of other games, Louisville, and then this past week against East Carolina. Again, the first quarter, it just got away so quickly that the game is out of hand. In those 3 games, BYU, Louisville, and East Carolina, I believe the stat is the opponents have outscored USF in the first half 107-14.
Right.
That's crazy. To USF's credit, they did rally in the second half. East Carolina played a lot better, but again, it's sort of like, at that point, the game is so far stretched out that people have shut the TV off by then.
Right.
You don't really pay that much attention to it. But I don't think they've quit. I think they're still trying. I think they do have some talent and some skill on that roster. But at 1-4, and now it's a mental game to just keep going and keep pushing and try to reverse this, because it's a hard thing to do. Once that boulder starts rolling down the hill, it's hard to get it back up the hill. So that's their challenge right now.
And what's I guess even more disappointing that it's both sides of the ball. It's not like it's the offense that's going out and scoring, but the defense can't stop. They're both struggling mightily in the first half. It's not like it's 28-21 at the half. Both sides of the ball are struggling. So you're getting behind huge deficits so early in the game, middle of the second quarter. The game, I won't say it's over, but it's virtually over.
Yeah, I will say this. I think the biggest concern is on defense. They're in the latest stats, they're 127th in the nation,
Yeah.
and that's out of 131 teams. They're not much better on offense at 102 out of
Right.
131. But I will say that the quarterback and the skill players at times have shown a great ability to move the ball. I
Yep.
certainly see more hope
Mhm.
on offense than I do defense. And defense, not only this season, but last year and the year before, has just been crazy bad. I mean, so many games with 500 yards allowed. I can't even count them up. There's many. So that's just not a good standard. If you allow 500 yards or 30 plus points every single night out, that you're not giving yourself even a chance to win the game.
Yeah, I was talking to Coach Levitt as part of our coach and the kicker segment just before you were on. We were talking about, again, they both coordinators are new at USF, defensive and offensive coordinators, and we
Right.
talked about maybe simplifying the scheme. I don't know how we obviously we don't know how complex they're going or not going as far as scheme, but maybe a simplify thing, especially on defense. Let's figure out the things we can do well and not try to get too schematically advanced when we're not ready to do that yet.
Yeah. And the other part of it is and this is true of a lot of teams, they've had a lot of injuries. So they've had, like last week, for example, a couple of the touchdowns were given up by the third string cornerback.
Right.
Not to disparage that kid, but they're
Right.
down to a third string cornerback. So,
Right.
they're having some personnel issues, maybe don't have the depth they expected. So,
Yep.
but like any team, you got to play through that. You got to figure out a way.
I think this will be a critical 6 or 7 weeks for Coach Scott. I know there's some heat building here in the area. Who knows what the administration's thinking? But again, it's not that you got to be competitive in some of these games. You got a couple more tough matchups, but you got some other games down the road that are winnable games. And again, not that you have to win 5 games, but you need to be competitive and not continue to get blown out.
Here's the problem. They're 1-4.
Yep.
They go to Cincinnati.
Yep.
Cincinnati has not lost a home game since 2017.
Right.
They're very good, as you know, so that's going to be a tough one. And then after that, they come home to play Tulane.
Yeah.
And Tulane's got it going. They look great the other night. Looks like Coach Fritz has got them
Yep.
on a big trajectory, and I'm very impressed with Tulane so far. So and then the bye week. So let's say things don't go well the next 2 weeks. You're sitting at 1-6 during a bye week.
Right.
Oh, what usually happens during a bye week? It's just not a good scenario.
Right.
There's some winnable games, as you said, on the schedule, but it's very logical to think that they could go 1-6, and that's going to go down hard.
Right.
For the USF fans to have to sit with that through a bye week.
I got you. All right, let's transition to a couple other places around the state. Let's go to Tallahassee. Obviously, 4-0 start. They lose to Wake Forest over the weekend. They're still in the mix in the Atlantic. They got NC State, Clemson. If you can win those 2 games, you're atop of the Atlantic. What are your thoughts just through 4 or 5 games with Mike Norvell? Seems like he's turned the culture around there, and they're on the uptick.
Yeah, I'm pretty encouraged with what Mike Norvell's done in Tallahassee. Obviously, it was a really wildly entertaining game when they beat LSU. A fun game, just probably gave heart attacks to fans from both sides of the game with the way it ended. But great start. It's still probably for longtime FSU fans sounds difficult to lose to Wake Forest, but Wake Forest is not the old Wake Forest. It's a good version of Wake Forest. It's a good team. It would have been a great win to get. But it didn't go their way. But as you said, they've got a lot of games left on their schedule that they can control it. Clearly they're on the upswing. Clearly they're moving forward. They're making progress. That's the biggest thing. But you compare them to USF situation, you don't necessarily see that progress. At FSU, you clearly see the progress.
Correct.
And now we'll see if they can take a step to contend for a conference title. It's going to be right in their lap to do it. So they've got to produce.
Next 2 weeks.
But they put themselves in position. So clearly they've moved forward. So I think, if there were questions about Mike Norvell, I think they've quelled a little bit. The noise has gotten quieter.
Right.
And if they can take care of business, I think, he'll have them right back where all the Seminole fans want him to be.
Let's go down to Miami. Mario Cristobal, tough last couple of weeks. They had a bye week last week. Again, the terrible loss to Middle Tennessee. You know, Texas A&M, you can excuse that loss, even though they very easily could have won the game. But the Middle Tennessee effort was pathetic in most people's eyes. Again, they're fortunate. They've not played any conference games yet, so all the conference games on their side is right in front of them. They have a pretty manageable schedule on their side of their division. What do you see out of Mario in year one down there?
Well, first of all, the Middle Tennessee game it's one of the most puzzling results I've seen in this state in a long time. That would be one that I wouldn't have even entertained a possibility of losing, but they did. So I think at this point we have to kind of figure Miami is sort of the Miami we've seen a lot of in the last few years. Very inconsistent, very talented, but very inconsistent. So we're not quite sure what to make of them yet. I think Mario Cristobal is the guy for Miami. I think he's going to have success there. Maybe it won't come this year, but I do think he was a great hire. I think he's going to get it going and get the recruiting at a much higher level. I think maybe the expectations got a little inflated early in the season, and that
Right.
tends to happen in Miami. But again, it's they've got to win their conference games. Certainly, beating Florida State would be a big thing for Miami to do.
Right.
And the reverse, Florida State beat Miami would be big for FSU. So the FSU Miami game very big this year for both sides to move forward. So, but Miami, until I see different, they're a 7-5, 8-4 kind of team. Looks like.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll get one more. Let's go to Gainesville. Obviously, I think most people would agree this is not a vintage Florida team. I think they're decent. They're not great. Richardson's had been yo-yo up and down. Great game at Tennessee, lousy against Kentucky. I think that's what you're going to see until he plays more and more games. People don't realize he's only started like 4 games. He's not. Right. It's only his 4th or 5th start, so it's not like he started a bunch of games. But I think Napier is building it too. I think this probably will be a 7-5 kind of year in Gainesville, but I think Napier seems like he's the right guy.
I think so too, and I think he's going to be the guy that's going to really get the recruiting at a high level, and they're going to have a lot of talent in the next 2 or 3 years in Gainesville, and I think they will build it to the point where they will contend for SEC titles. They will be able to strap it on against Alabama and Georgia and those schools again. Not yet, but in a couple of years. Richardson is an enigma, extremely talented, but makes crazy mistakes. Made a lot against USF in the game I attended.
Yep.
But boy, when he's rolling, his upside is through the roof. I think, like you said, they're more of an average sort of a team. They'll go to a bowl game. And then they'll look to get better. I do think they're going to beat somebody. They're going to upset somebody down the line. I don't know if it's going to be Georgia or somebody like that. They can get that big. But I do think Billy Napier will get an unexpected victory at some point in his first season.
All right. Who do you think nationally? Who do you think outside of Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State, who's the 4th or 5th best team in the country in your mind?
Well, I do like USC. They're off to a great start with Lincoln Riley. They're under the radar being the West Coast team. A lot of their games start late.
Yep.
And I don't know that they were picked that high to start the season, so they don't have really that profile. But as they keep moving through an undefeated season, I think it's going to be tougher and tougher to ignore them. Yep. So I would certainly look to them. I think Michigan has a chance too in the Big Ten. By all accounts, it'll go down to the last game of the year again against Ohio State to maybe decide who wins that conference. But what we've seen in college football for the most part, it's a pretty tightly packed club at the top, and we don't see a lot of change in that club. I mean, Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State. I mean, how many times have we seen those guys in the playoffs the last 8 or 9 years? Looks to be the same kind of thing. USC has never been in the playoff. And that would be and Pac-12 hasn't really been there much. So that would be a way to change it up a little bit. I'm not seeing the little guys out there, the Cincinnatis of the world.
Not this year.
Not this year. No, not that team. We got some interesting little guys that have gotten some great wins. I love what I've seen from the Sun Belt so far, some of those results. But I think when all is said and done, we might be looking at Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Ohio State, the kind of the same thing that we've seen before. I think Clemson's going to have to work to keep
I agree.
its status, and looking forward to Florida State Clemson in a lot of ways on both sides to see how both schools perform in that game. That'll be fascinating.
Yeah, like I said, and people don't realize if you didn't watch the Alabama game Saturday, remember Bryce Young gets hurt. They were up big, but Arkansas had 3rd and 15 in a 28-23 game, in the backup quarterback run 75 yards on a scramble play on 3rd and 15. Or that game is not a 19-point game. I mean, that game probably goes to the wire if he doesn't run 75 yards on 3rd and 15. So, depending on how long Bryce Young's out, Alabama could be vulnerable here in a couple games during the latter run here. So, all right, Joey, appreciate the time, man. Great insight. I'm a Dick Clark fan. I'm a Dick Clark and LeVar Burton and Nipsey Russell and all those guys.
I think one day, and this is a sad commentary in both of us, maybe when college football season's over, maybe we get together and watch some old reruns of $100,000 Pyramid. Only you and I would find that an interesting night, but we'd probably have a good time.
That's right. Well, Joey, tell everybody where they can find you online, and how can they find the Bulls broadcast online as well?
Well, we're on Bulls Unlimited, which is part of the TuneIn network, but the over the air network is on the Bone 102.5 this year
in the Tampa Bay area.
Tampa Bay area, yeah, a powerful station on the FM. And if you want to find me, I'm on Twitter at Joey Johnston 813 area code. So
Joey, I'm going to tell Joey this. He knows this. Back when I was playing high school football, Joey used to write stories about the high school scene. I think he actually wrote it. He probably included my name in one of those stories a long time ago.
I hope I spelled it right. Not a hard name to spell, but I hope I spelled it right. But I'm, like you, I grew up here, and I still, hey, every Saturday, well, not Saturdays with all the rain and hurricanes we've been having, what Mondays or Tuesdays, I'm looking for those scores, and I'll still go to a game here and there, but I still like to keep up with who's good in the area. And we see tons of guys from this area. Yeah. We watch play on Saturday, and then we ultimately watch play on Sunday. So we've got a lot of football players from Tampa Bay area. They're doing great things.
I'll tell you a good story. So the fans, we made up the week of the hurricane. The high school games got canceled, and we made them up on Monday night, October the 3rd. And guess who was the coach in my game at Plant City High School? We know we're getting old. Bucks wide receiver and former LSU Michael Clayton was the head coach at Plant City in the game that I refereed on Monday night. Okay. So we're getting old then when we're refereeing Michael Clayton as the head coach.
You had the Plant City Alonzo game, huh?
I did. Yep.
Yeah. So that's a good win for Michael Clayton, because Alonzo had been doing pretty well, and I 37-12. Something.
Yep, that was right.
Yeah.
A lot of penalties.
Very good.
A lot of penalties.
Yeah. Well, he's. That's interesting. He stepped into an interesting situation. Plant City is still one of those small town kind of places where you can build it.
He can be good there. They get players over there.
He can win there. So I expect he will win there. Maybe not immediately, but that's a great situation to be in. So interesting.
And another guy that I know a Tampa guy that played at Miami was the offensive coordinator for Michael, Kenny Kelly.
I did not know that. Well, Kenny Kelly's father, Kenny Kelly's father, Floyd Kelly, the late Floyd Kelly, was the longtime Plant City head coach and assistant coach. So Kenny Kelly, we think Tampa Catholic, but Kenny Kelly's a Plant City kid who just happened to go to Tampa Catholic, but he has Plant City roots. That's interesting. Michael Clayton is the head coach and Kenny Kelly as the OC. And then we have Mike Williams at Wharton.
Yes, which I've had him this year too. And they got a good team.
The head coaches in this county could play like an alumni game, and it'd be pretty good.
That's right. Kenny Kelly could be the quarterback with Clayton and Michael Williams on each side. That'd be a lot of teams nowadays.
That would be a good college fantasy draft right there. No question.
That's right. And then you got Martin Gramatica helping out at Cambridge Christian. He could be the kicker, and we'd have a hell of a team.
Yeah. And there's, again, something only we would do. We could probably get the rosters of the coaches and probably put a team together. That's a good team.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, Joey, appreciate the time, man. Keep up the good work, and good luck to the Bulls as we move forward, and we'll talk real soon, okay?
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it, man.
All right. Thanks.